Hi there, this is Ken's at Fool's Flow, and welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad to have you here. Today, as I'm filming this, it is the tail end of Aries season 2022, so sliding this video in here at the last second, but today we are going to be talking about the Emperor, as this card corresponds with Aries. It's very much associated, very much tied together, and I love doing these tarot study videos, so I thought, why not restart this series with the beginning of the astrological wheel and go from there. So today we're going to be talking about the Emperor. It feels like everything is always a cycle, but there's a lot more to this card than you might think. I think people have pretty strong opinions about the Emperor, and it's like really easy to write it off as like a simple energy, but there's a lot to it. So I'm going to be going through like the entire, what I see as like cycle of different energies and aspects of the Emperor, and I'll be showing different cards in my collection and talking about them and how they pair together. So if you are interested in studying with me in this way, stay right here because you're in the right place. So thanks again, and let's get into the video. So we have the Rider-Waite-Smith Emperor right here, most classic artwork and symbolism you will see. So he has both the Aries ram horns here, as well as the Ankh symbol, a crown, this very stable chair. And while we're on the topic of stability, I wanted to make sure that we do touch on the numerology of it all. So the Emperor is number 4 in the major arcana, and 4 is a number of stability. You know, if you look at a square, a cube, you know, it's very much naturally equidistant on all of the sides, and very much a stable structure and number. So all of the 4s are about structure and confidence in you're building something with a really strong foundation. And so that is where the Emperor is coming from. You can even see that there are 4 of the Aries ram heads on the throne. So really just immediately very intense symbolism. But of course we're going to talk more about Aries energy and the Ankh, the crown, and just all of the different types of Emperor archetypes that you can find. So let's begin with this life cycle of the Emperor, if you will. So when we think about Aries energy, you inevitably think about the beginning of the astrological wheel, as well as the fact that it starts off the spring season. At least in the northern hemisphere, basically does start around the time of the spring equinox, and so it is completely tied to this fiery, pumped up energy of rebirth and things coming back, a new cycle beginning. It starts out the whole wheel for all of the other signs, and so that is a really key part. You know, you don't I mean, I guess there's the rare baby that gets put on the throne, but for most people, you do not start out as an emperor. You know, everyone comes from somewhere, regardless of how you get to that place. And we are going to talk about different routes to power within this archetype later on. But yes, an important thing to know about Aries energy is that rebirth, giving yourself a second chance, being creative, being a divine creator, co-creating with spirit. You know, the Emperor is not afraid to start over, to reinvent himself. You know, I think if he gets more settled later on, or a little imbalanced, maybe he's stuck in his ways, but at least Aries energy in its purest form is very much open to change and to beginning again, and just summoning that energy. It's like charging it up, because obviously energy is required for rebirth. We have these spring greens here, lotus flower here, You know, with the lotus, it's ascending up from the mud and appearing above water. So it's just like seeds sort of coming up from underground in the beginning of spring and coming back. And we have that again with regeneration and stimulation, and it's definitely not a coincidence that these cards both have Aries correspondences in this deck. But again, it's just that fiery energy that really gets things going in a way that only Aries can. And so with that, another Aries card in this deck, and you will notice that it's number 44. I don't think that is a coincidence at all. Next card we have is Victory, and there's a crown, nasturtiums are a cool flower, but this sort of segues into the ascension to the status of Emperor, or we're just going to look at different Emperor cards, and let's get into the most straightforward depiction of this card and sort of the first level of meaning that you would want to learn in the process of really exploring this archetype and this energy. So let's look at that now. Okay, so I know this might be a lot to take in, but let's just go through it systematically. So we have our dear Emperor here back in the center. We also have two very classic looking Emperors. You can even see there are 4 ram's heads here, and you will notice that there are a lot of Ankhs. If you're not familiar, Ankh is an Egyptian symbol that is all about life, immortality. It also symbolizes a balance between masculine and feminine energies, and I think that's really important for any emperor. You know, he is the embodiment of divine masculine energy, but I think to be a good ruler, you need to have that in check. And so thereby be balanced with feminine energy as well. You'll notice another 4 ram's heads right here. There's some more non-traditional emperors on this side. But even this dragon here seems to be holding some kind of scepter. So that does bring me back to the topic of phallic symbols. You know, we have this wand right here for power. We have the sword that will come back up again later. I feel like it kind of speaks for itself, but yeah, if it was confusing, these longer Ankhs are still ultimately Ankhs. Of course, we have the crown symbolism as well, and we all know what that means. You will notice though that this particular crown and this particular Ankh both have, again, the Aries ram's horns on them. So you can sort of see how much these two are tied in together. Obviously this is the sovereign, so that could be any ruler. I think it is kind of a more balanced one between masculine and feminine. We have the moon here, but regardless, that's that. Going back to King Arthur here, I wanted to bring in 2 other cards from that deck that I think are important as well because they talk about different rulers. So we have Isis, Osiris, Set, and we have Ra as well, who, if you notice, is holding an Ankh. And again, we have swords for phallic imagery. So there's a lot of power here, a lot of potential. We're going to be going into that and how people use it going forward, but yeah, these are kind of some more traditional depictions and just sort of a preview of the kind of energy we're going to be looking at going forward. And to segue into that, I have 2 really important cards, which is we have connection here, which is kind of an interesting word perhaps to go with a crown, but it's another crown. And we have interconnected. And so it is really essential to while we have this, you know, elevated individual, heightened, maybe some sort of divine connection, I don't know, but they need to remain connected to the earthly world and to other people. You know, I really like, this is a very high femme deck, and I love that we have 3 people here, not just one. It's sort of a collectivist message that we will explore further going on. But yeah, I just wanted to include these because I think it's easy for the Emperor to become very much solitary and like not consulting others for their input, and that's no good. So a truly balanced Emperor cares about the opinions of others, and then he can filter through and make the decisions he needs to make, but he's committed to listening and remaining connected to those he rules over. With that, we'll go into perhaps a different sort of style of depicting the Emperor that might demonstrate this interconnected connection energy a little bit better than these more human or abstract depictions. So let's look at that now. So I think it might be interesting to see the Emperor from more of a non-human perspective, touching on that interconnectedness that I was just talking about. So you'd really be surprised how often oak is shown as a leader. I do believe this is an oak tree in this as well, as the Emperor, as the leader, as a father. Being struck by lightning is apparently something about oak trees I didn't know about before I had this card, but it's true. They can withstand lightning, which really shows how powerful they really are. So I really like botanical decks, so I might be a little biased, but I just really enjoy these as sort of a refreshing, different take on things. And so I think you can guess some of the themes of stability, you know, long lasting. Many different creatures will turn to an oak tree for resources or protection. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's quite an enduring species of tree, very powerful. So I also want to bring in a couple more cards. First though, I just wanted to read from the guidebook for Follow the Leader because I think it's very valuable. So the quote for it is, "Every life is a teaching tool for others. Your authenticity and honesty are an example to those around you." So you're being called to lead others by example, and your wisdom has been earned as a result of your bravery and the adventure of your life. So, you know, all of the battles won and lost, places discovered, tears shed, joy revealed, all of that has placed you in a unique position to be of service to others. And your suffering has been crystallized into a talisman of wisdom. Now you must share it. By being fully authentic, you'll lead others into the light. And you'll be required to divulge some things about your past so that you may help with someone else. Lead with love. There's another message here as well. Look to those whose great character and accomplishments you admire. Emulate the leaders you respect. You will then, in turn, have more to offer. So, a couple of messages here. You know, I think it's really important for a leader to be vulnerable, to be honest about what exactly does make them qualify to lead. You know, what is their perspective, their background, what shapes their lens of looking at the world. I think that's important information because it informs how they will behave, you know. I was kind of abstracting the Emperor energy to like a character, but if, you know, we're bringing it into our lives as we use these divination tools, these are all things to consider when stepping up to be a leader or when following someone or working with someone. So that as well. a great leader, a great emperor will not rewrite history. They will be transparent about, who it is they admire, who has come before them. We'll look at that a little bit later. But they don't try to act like they're the one true leader of the universe and the only person you should listen to or anything like that. Again, that theme of interconnectedness. Everyone is interdependent on each other. There is no way that the emperor could have this much power on his own or on their own. There are multiple times where some of the cards in this make me think about billionaires, but there of course is that exploitative element of the emperor. I was trying to portray the energy in like a more positive or neutral light, but I think in this day and age a lot of us do look negatively at the emperor. Again, we have phallic tree symbolism. Someone should make like a skyscraper emperor card, something like that. But you could look at it as they're extracting nutrients from the environment to grow so large, less so of they're communicating with all the plant life around them and providing. So definitely different ways to look at it, but I just thought the non-human depictions of the emperor were really powerful and important to include. And I wanted to bring in just a few more cards. So we also have, I wanted to compare an Empress and an Emperor that I thought were really important and valuable. So we have, this is from the Spacious Tarot, this is the Empress, this is the Emperor, and it's kind of just this idea of like the Empress is growing wildly with abandon, just so abundant and beautiful and kind of just every which way, not really restricting themselves in any way. And then we have here the Emperor as Poppy, and just in these orderly rows, essentially. Also, we have red Aries energy. We'll look at that more going forward, but I just thought that was sort of a helpful non-human depiction as well. And then we also have from the Herb Crafters Tarot, this Emperor, which is actually hemlock in this arrangement. It's got these 4 houses, they call it in the guidebook there. And it has this, balanced masculine energy. And then I guess the idea of the hemlock is that it starts out more flexible and soft as a wood and grows more firm with time. So I really liked that because it's like this sort of non-reactive way of setting boundaries where it's using your power in a really responsible way by, again, just sort of taking things slow, probably like incorporating input from others, not just making these rash decisions that have really heavy consequences too quickly. It's sort of a slower Emperor energy, and I really like that because I do think Aries and the Emperor can move a little too quickly sometimes. There's sort of a slower, older, more restricted, more conservative energy to it sometimes where they're like stuck to the throne, right? But then there are other other aspects and archetypes that we will again look at later. But yes, just a couple more examples of non-human Emperor energy, and it's just interesting to think about different types of wood. This also would be flexible, right? Because it's flower stems. So you really see how in every single deck there are different ways to think about this and generate symmetry, generate synergy. And I think that's really beautiful. So let's move on to the next segment. So speaking of different versions of the Emperor energy, we have the Father Archetype. And this here, and I'll read out, this has light attributes and shadow attributes. So the light attributes are talent for creating and supporting life. We just talked about all that. Positive guiding light within a tribal unit. And the shadow attributes are dictatorial control and abuse of authority. So really spot on with everything we've been saying so far. We have yet another tree, I think it's an oak tree, as the father, and the deck starts with the mother. So kind of, it's number 2, but I think it's sort of similar to the Empress being 3 and the Emperor being 4. Kind of mirrors that, even if it's not exactly the same numbers. And so with this duality here, this is all about how, you know, oh, fathers and our relationships to them, oh my goodness. I know some people don't have a complicated one, and like, good for you. Anyway, there's so much to fathers, you know, there's this being present, being supportive, protective, but then it's like there's only so much that they can do. And what they can do as well is set boundaries. So I'll read this out. It says, take care of yourself today, lovely. Let yourself set boundaries, say no to that which drains you, and create space within your heart for your needs to come first. These are necessary practices for your well-being and are not selfish in any way. Be wary of anyone who might try to shame you for taking care of yourself. So there is sort of this like self-sacrificing energy to the father as well, but then of course it can so easily flip over into being selfish and yeah, kind of snapping and only looking out for themselves instead of the family. I wanted to read a little bit from this guidebook. It's the Wild Unknown Archetypes before we continue. So the father embodies both light and dark aspects of the masculine. He is infinitely dynamic and complex. His energy is strong and regal, embodying such virtues as honesty, wisdom, and loyalty. Yet ironically and simultaneously, the father is often absent, literally or emotionally. Through absence or action, the father eventually reveals that he is neither a king nor a god, but a human being with many flaws and wounds. He is both the guardian and the one who leaves us to the wolves. Here yet gone, the champion and the failure. The father can never resolve or escape this duality. It is inherent to the archetype itself. Witnessing the father's limitations allows the child to grow beyond the family and into the world. When light, supportive, strategic, regal, kind authority. When dark, disappearing, disappointing, devastated by failures. And we have here, become a student of this masculine energy. Watch the father in movies and Shakespeare plays. See the father as a pattern, not as personal. And so that's really important with the major arcana. These are energies, you know, not people. I mean, they could be, but it is different from the court cards in that way. These are much larger energies and archetypes, and these cards sort of start to get at that. And you know, ideally the father is protective, setting those boundaries. I have some protection cards here. Don't know how I want to lay them out. Maybe we'll do that. It's funny, the color schemes kind of match pretty well. And yeah, just you'll notice that again we have the Aries symbol for this protection energy here. Oh my, you would not believe. Okay, there are literally oak leaves in this. Tell me those aren't oak leaves. Wild. And we even have trees. I mean, that's not, perhaps not anything. But you also see the poppies here as well, interestingly enough. So you just really see how symbolism repeats itself But yes, ideally the father is always very protective and strong and present, but we all know that that is not always the case. So yes, a couple of things. The Hamsa is an ancient symbol of protection, and the guidebook for this talks about attuning your energy, or like trying to feel out for vibrations to sort of heighten your awareness of all of the different spirits, guides, ancestors, deities that might be around you if you are feeling alone. So it actually really talks about the interconnectedness of things as well. I guess it has these vines, which are organic matter, but it's just, again, that sort of message of connectedness. Nobody does any of this alone. Even the father with his protection, you know, it's not just him doing the protecting. He needs help, of course. So it's always a group effort. And I wanted to add, I have thought about this card, but I don't know, but it seems perfect right now because it's left out to the wolves, left out with the wolves. And so it's funny, we have coyotes here. Yeah, this is how we feel when we are not feeling protected by the father or the emperor. And we realize at some point that we do need to fend for ourselves because there is only so much that they can do, even if they are trying their hardest. So now we'll move back into a little bit more of the astrological and elemental aspects of the Emperor. Okay, so next we have, as I was saying, some elemental depictions of Aries energy and Emperor energy. So, key things about Aries. It's time to take action. New moon in Aries, all about that action, maybe not thinking it through enough first. We have be bold and make the first move, cardinal moon. So Aries is one of the cardinal astrological signs, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. We also have a fiery climax approaches, full moon in Aries. I wanted to bring those energies in so we can discuss it. I also have the cardinal, which I feel like describes cardinal energy pretty well, honestly. Like, I feel like they're the most assertive and like, I don't know, I guess kind of a healthy balance between mutable and fixed signs. So they love where they're at. They're not as stubborn as fixed signs, but they're certainly not as easily influenced as mutable signs. Aries knows who they are, as does a balanced emperor. I have burn here. I guess that makes sense to put it by the candle. That seems pretty fitting. Let's add some more. So yes, I have drawing down the sun, wildfire, divine masculine, magnificence, witness. And so yes, fire is regarded as a masculine element in tarot. So, and we have that with the sun as well. So that's that. It's basically working with the fire element. I also have embracing here and the self, which I thought were helpful for cardinal energy. The self says, gathering your power. A lot of the dragons in this deck are quite fiery. I just thought this too is interesting, that it was sort of this fiery sunset landscape. It almost looks like the sparks or like sort of the flickers of embers coming off of a fire right next to where this is happening, but I guess it could also be fireflies. And yeah, Aries loves themselves. Aries has a good high self-esteem. In fact, some of this is kind of about like checking yourself, you know. It has your ego gotten out of balance. That is something that's important for everyone. And I would say especially Aries and any good emperor as well. So yes, these things are inextricably tied to fire energy, to cardinal energy, and yeah, interesting that this is 22 as well. That would add up to 4, so that does check out very well. That's funny. I didn't notice that until now, but there you go, more numerology for you. So that's pretty much all I had to say about cardinal energy, the fire element, and Aries. Just wanted to bring that in because we're going to be diving into different Emperor archetypes, but I didn't want to lose this key element of the card and the energy. You can't factor this out. It's very important. So let's move on to the next section. So this is actually another Emperor card. We have the Emperor's Domain from the Majestic Earth Tarot. Has the Aries symbol and the fire symbol, and the keywords are indomitable, durability, realization, and formation. So I think we've definitely talked about all of those things already. But what I wanted to talk about here, kind of building off of the impulsive Aries energy, is, yeah, some expression from the cardinal side of things and some risk-taking from the Aries side of things. I was trying to figure out which side I wanted to put these on. I guess kind of this tension within things. You know, we have this desire to take risks and take action. You've seen that echoed throughout already. And then we also have maybe a little bit more hesitance. I wanted to bring in that phallic energy again of the sword. We'll see more of those, but even though it's more of an air element, I think the Emperor still wields the sword a decent amount of the time. And I brought in this potential card as well because I wanted to talk about mountains that we see here. I also liked the warm color scheme of this one. You know, they could have just made it a regular sort of ocean color scheme, but it's this warm, stormy, potentially, could be. Makes me think of Red Sky at Night, Sailor's Delight, Red Sky at Morning, Sailor's Day Morning. So this could be potentially getting really intense. But with mountains, we just have this sort of scale, this grandness, you know, that high, close to the heavens, close to God, close to the divine, whatever you want to call it, but that elevation is just like elevating a person to power. Those heights are really significant. So I sort of wanted to include this vastness that you could also see with the Emperor. You know, the original is pretty focused on his throne and stuff, but I feel like a landscape like this is kind of what I imagine for him. Like, it's like, you know, I rule and reside over all of this land. And yes, especially mountains. I think this is a volcano. So there you go, with like more fire energy and just being responsible with your power, with your energy. It's really important. Wow, that makes me realize, okay, I want to add more cards. This keeps happening. 1 second. A couple of these I wish I had added before, but I'm not going back. So this Your Light card would have been great for the last spread. Kind of that cardinal, that self-involved energy, but like rightfully so. Have Germinate here, so that would just go back to the beginning of that spring energy. I found some extra cards while I was looking for the cards I was actually thinking of. So of course, fire could include that as well. Straightforward. Interestingly enough that it's like burning these trees. They look more like pine trees, but anyway. This volcano just made me think of these volcano cards. So just more about transformation and releasing your energy in a strategic way. That's what especially this one is about. This one's a bit more chaotic, but yes. So there's just that tension there feel like everything is just like this balance, or this is going to be a theme throughout this entire cycle that we're looking at, but just that desire to take risks, take action, and that desire to sort of hold back, or the concern of having the wrong timing or using your power in the wrong way. So it's important to be thinking about all of these things. Woof, it's getting dark very quickly. But I wanted to talk about 2 different ways to come up into power. So put those there. And I think this is important for reasons I will get into. But I was kind of looking at the Prince versus the Warrior archetypes. So let's talk about it. I'm just going to lay these out and then we can talk about it. Okay, so it's rapidly getting dark, so I'm trying to keep things moving. Classic me, again, really would not be a video on my channel if it didn't start getting dark. But here I wanted to talk about the ascension to power and going back to where it is that we come from, and again, how we reach this position of status. So I thought the warrior versus the prince would be interesting. Kind of the person who's born into power and lives their whole life assuming they will get the power, versus the interloper, the usurper, the one who works really hard to build themselves up and ascend to this position and fight for that, versus having it maybe a little bit more comfortable. And, you know, I feel like throughout history we have glamorized isn't the right word. We have considered this side more legitimate, you know, and so there is this othering, you know, I think by considering this wildling here. Let's like look at the actual cards. So thorns, weave together the crown you deserve. Courage, fire element again. We have the warrior with Aries horns on the sword, so that's really bringing things together again. And this wildling here, Game of Thrones vibes maybe. But 2 swords, kind of clashing, lots of energy. Party leader, politician, diplomat vibes, influence, straightforward. The gallery of those who came before, so that's where the prince is coming from. You know, we have a feast, vitality, they are nourished, they are entitled, they're planning for this abundance their whole life. And now I feel like this is how they see themselves, transcending, achieving success. But the warrior sort of, it's more of a fight than this sort of just ideological waiting around for the king to get out of the way so that it's your turn. To read their light versus shadow attributes. For the warrior, it's strength, skill, discipline, and toughness of will. Heroism, stoicism, and self-sacrifice in conquering the ego. For shadow, it's treating ethical principles for victory at any cost. Indifference to the suffering inflicted on others. For prince, we have, as the light attribute, romantic charm and potential for power. And shadow attribute, using power for self-aggrandizement. So, yes. I think, you know, when we look at the Emperor as kind of a symbol of oppression and outdated systems and stereotypes and who holds the power and needs to be overthrown, we sort of look at how things have been handed down historically and how there is, let's just say, like a racist, classist, add a lot of different words, way of othering, of saying people are more wild or uncivilized, animal-like, potentially dirty, just not civilized, not proper, not intelligent, all of these things, when it's like, it's about, your like it's about your qualification. It's how, you know, you should be evaluated on the merit of your character and your style, and people have different ways of existing. And, you know, if anything, I think growing up entitled is probably going to set you up for failure more than working really hard to get there. Of course, we don't want to be hurting people along the way, but that's kind of that insidious part where we're primed to not think as much about how this is perhaps less action-packed, or, you know, there's less attention drawn to it, but that's on purpose because there is all of this suffering that's happening more behind the scenes and in a more entrenched way. So this is, I think, really important, and, you know, just adds a level of nuance and thought instead of just writing off the Emperor as like, oh, bad. It's really an opportunity to look at these themes. You know, these energies are really applicable to a lot of people and things, and this is a really good example, I think, of the ascent to the Emperor and how that resonates with our collective. So now I'm going to move forward to when they achieve that position of power. Let's look at those archetypes. There's once again a tension between two different possibilities for how that can look. Hi, I changed the lighting, so it's getting a little dark. I like that there's, you know, kind of this fieriness to it. So yes, I wanted to talk about two different, and honestly they're just two different sides of the same coin, but let's talk about these archetypes. So we have King. I'll put God in the middle, I guess, and Bully. I thought were all important. And yes, we have sitting on top of the world and the one who needs to control as key energies. And something that they'll be thinking about is their territory. We have two different types of dominance here, and longevity versus mortality. So I wanted to talk about the King versus the Bully because often they are one and the same, but this is perhaps assuming that the King is balanced. Let's look at all of these light and shadow attributes. I also have God in the middle because, I don't know, it's really easy for that Emperor to, you know, claim this sort of divine status in their leadership. So for the King, we have enlightened, benevolent leadership, benefiting those in your charge. For Shadow, we have excessive feelings of entitlement, rulership without restraint. For God, we have benevolence and compassion, recognizing the eternal force within yourself and others. And for Shadow, we have despotism and cruelty, using power to control people. And with Bully, highlights your tendency to intimidate others, helps you confront the inner fears that bully you, but Shadow conceals deep fears behind verbal or physical abuse. So yes, there is this insecurity with the one who needs to control. And I'm just gonna say it's tied to my personal conspiracy theory that all of the suffering in our world can be traced back to a fear of death, of billionaires not wanting to admit to their mortality. That's my spicy hot take. Maybe I can make a whole video about that. But yeah, these are deep fears, and I think that does drive a lot of the abuse that comes out of imbalanced people in power. There's a deep need to control their territory and everything that lies within it. We have both of these dominance here. This one is, I feel, more like self-dominance, believing in yourself, you know, that's like that self-trust and that appreciating your own power and everything like that. It's not as much outward facing, whereas this is sort of about controlling another person. It's interesting that we have poppies again. Sitting on top of the world, I just thought, went back to thrones, and we have like God here and this eye of awareness, and like the thought that a good leader would have clear vision, but you know, not always. So yeah, I guess this is to say that a balanced king emperor energy would be focused on longevity of their, you know, legacy. Again, not necessarily a benign thing, probably not good that power is passed down like that, but they're not as much like, yeah, I guess this really is just like two different ways to be bad, but you know, they're at least not turning on their own family, in a desperate bid to avoid aging and creating a line of succession. Whereas for the bully, if you're just straight up a bully, again, it's sort of that like invisible violence versus more outward and obvious violence. You will be very much mean, violent, just a lot of really bad behavior if you have this deep-seated fear of mortality. So yes, just wanted to look at these different ways of wielding power. You know, do you share it with everyone, or do you grip it tightly, not let it go? Not very healthy. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for that. It sort of speaks for itself. Just shows how, you know, there can be the same or just a different version of similar misuse of power that's just a little bit more skillfully hidden due to tradition, I would say, and systems that are set up. But again, our society is pretty well set up to protect bullies as well, unfortunately. But yeah, let's move on to talking more about how the Emperor wields their power. Okay, so there are low-key a ton of cards in this one. We're going to be talking about the Judge versus the Destroyer. Ooh, pretty intense. Let's see how the cards work out. Okay, everything fits. Awesome. So yes, I want to talk about the Judge versus the Destroyer. There are different ways of dealing with your responsibility as a ruler, as an emperor. You know, you're supposed to be this pillar for everyone. You're committed to your leadership. You review your responsibilities. I'll read this here. There is much power in the act of releasing or taking responsibility, as some responsibilities are ours to hold and others are not. Today, review your physical, mental, and emotional responsibilities. If we hold that which we are not meant to, we can be drained, and if we deny that which we are meant to hold, we can become powerless. And so I'll bring that back at the end, but yes, it's really important for an emperor to know what's theirs and what's not theirs. You know, if they try to micromanage, that's a problem. If they deny when something is wrong and is being brought to their attention, that is also a problem. And so I feel like the Judge is, and again, it's like not necessarily better, because it can be just as violent, just in a more quiet way. But the Judge would be, you know, the emperor, the king that like lets people come up to them in a line and listens to their problems and helps them out, that kind of scene in some sort of form of media. You know, this is again coming from that place of experience and wisdom. They've earned their spot. We again have the fire element here. For Judge, we have balancing justice and compassion, managing the fair distribution of power, got those scales, Libra style. And you know, shameless self-promotion, I do have a video about justice that I did earlier on in my channel. I will have that in the cards and linked in the description if you want to check that out. That was a fun deep dive. And yes, so moving back into it, the shadow attributes for the Judge are offering only destructive criticism, misusing business, legal, or criminal authority. And so we're already talking about destruction. You know, you can have these people who remain in power for a really long time and do absolutely horrific things, but because it's, you know, within a system that's well entrenched, it's not as obvious as this side of things. I will draw your attention to this witch here has a bat and a sword in their closet, which is pretty legendary, I think. So it does say witch, justice is coming. We have another justice oracle card here, which is cool. I didn't put in any tarot cards because that is another major card. We have fear that the light will bring judgment, the justice, and weight of truth, which is kind of giving like white man's burden vibes, but again, it's, you know, there is a stress that comes from, if you really are dedicated to wielding your responsibilities, then that can weigh on you. You know, with that hard-earned wisdom, you've seen a lot. If you are a judge and you're helping people in that way, you're hearing a lot of different stories and you're having to make some hard decisions. But this is about not letting that completely destabilize you. You know, being able to be decisive. It's interesting that the light is coming from a fire specifically, and then we have more eyes again. Yeah, I threw that in there because it'd be interesting to see how they would fare if the mirror was turned back on them a lot of the time. You know, we have a lot of corrupt judges out there. But on the destroyer side of things, I don't know why I threw productivity in. I guess it's kind of just back to like doing the most. Doing the most in a situation. It's also potentially burning down a harvest if you are being destructive, but I guess just different ways, you know, if there's sort of a blocked productivity, a blocked frustration, if this bureaucracy is moving too slowly, this is where we can sort of get into the Aries scaries, or just like the faster, more impulsive Aries energy that we were talking about. So we have destruction, releasing your anger. I love this card, Phoenix. How's that for a happily ever after? Just like, F you. They don't actually have middle fingers in the air, but that's the vibe. Destruction again, and Wrath, which is a really powerful card in this Crow's deck. It's really wild. They like black out the sky. There's so many of them. And I feel like this is already sort of tying into, we'll look at more collective anger being put towards the establishment. But yeah, I guess again, these are two sides of the same coin. I just wanted to show how easy it is to be destructive when you're in a position of authority. You could look at the book for these. I'm not going to say that word because I think it really is a racialized slur at this point, but you know, the uncivilized, let's say that, the unexpected, the rejected. The destroyer has necessary yet painful work to do in the world. Culturally, we have an aversion to endings. We hang on to permanence as a signifier of success, yet the destroyer pulls the rug out from underneath relationships, jobs, homes, and all forms of security. It's the part of us that wants things to end. Its painful orientation is to uncover our true purpose. The destroyer does not let us linger long in comforts, as it knows not much happens in that realm. With its piercing eyes, it just seeks out stagnancy from a distance, and the rest becomes history. In the old myths, this is the moment when heads begin to roll, the ground opens up, and castles crumble. Hold on for the ride. The destroyer has arrived. These smoldering ruins here. Consider Picasso's statement, every act of creation is first of all an act of destruction. So true. Like, whenever any of these decisions are being made, if there is a positive impact, there will also inevitably be negative impacts. And I feel like maybe sometimes when an emperor is being really destructive, it almost is like this self-sabotage coming from a place of not being able to admit that they feel stuck, that they don't like the system that they're in, that they don't like acting this way. Maybe that is more rare and I'm giving them too much credit, but I do feel like they are like, I have all this power and I still feel stuck. So they just sort of act out because they can. So, and then again, that's still not seen as uncivilized because they're the emperor. They do what they want. Swift, imprecise blows that redirect our life, self-destruction, negativity, unwillingness to rebuild. Yeah. And for the judge, the critic, the diplomat, the advocate. Judge has an incredibly important job. They work every waking hour of every day, helping us discern what is safe, true, and just. When this archetype remains unconscious or is captivated by fear, wise discernment turns into painful judgment of self and other. Ironically, the judge's energy can be the seed of racism, bigotry, and fear-mongering. This is the judge out of balance, building walls, separating from other. When this same discerning force is made conscious and healed, however, the judge may be found advocating for civil rights causes, standing up for the underdog, providing resources for those in need, and forgiving again and again. Love is the deciding factor. Awakening to this archetype is essential for the complex times we are in. Get your judge in order. The world needs it. Discernment, advocacy, right action, compassion, critical, punishing, unforgiving, wall building. Osiris and the white feather of Mot. Yes, that's where those scales come from. Which again, I will direct you to my Justice video. The judge's energy is contagious. When we feel judged, walls go up all around. Similarly, when we feel accepted, the entire world softens. So as you can see, it's really easy to get out of balance in these roles, but I do think we need a little bit of both. Sort of, again, holding back versus like burn it all down. You know, this is more like tyrannical energy. I feel like it is getting a little bit confused with revolutionary energy, but we're getting to that. So just you wait. It is not quite the same. I wanted to talk about this from the perspective of the Emperor, but we will move into the collective. I did just want to talk about one other possibility for how things can go that isn't very productive. You could have an emperor who is neither of these things. They're actually not claiming their power for whatever reason, if they're not able to or not willing to, or someone else has claimed power over them. But there is always that potential of a puppet ruler, you know, someone who is just standing aside while chaos or violence is happening, and they're not doing anything about it when they theoretically could. So that's just another way of being imbalanced. I mean, sometimes people are legitimately like completely trapped, but other times it's like, no, you really could do something though, you just choose to look the other way. So I wanted to add those in as another potential way that the power manifests. But yes, now we will move into kind of the collective response to these energies. So let's look at that now. So we do have revolution. The revolutionary fire is like inevitably tied to this. So we have pyrokinesis, sort of balancing again of masculine, feminine, yin yang. Debate, rage, revolution, attention. Protest says start a revolution. We have liberation here. Triple moon and key gives me Hecate, I don't know how to say her name, energy. This darkness. We have connect to fire. I could have thrown these in before. Wasn't quite sure where to put them. But connect to fire, security. So this is kind of the thing that's being subverted, right? But also, can we form security as a collective? This is a thing. And we have death of the deceitful. So kind of just that inevitable ending that we were talking about. Yeah. And liberation as a result. So yes, this is what happens when an emperor is out of balance for too long. I think people don't like that misuse of power, and you know, collective power is really, really fucking powerful. Excuse my language. Collective energy pulled together is really, really powerful. It's revolutionary. It leads to liberation. So yeah, this is something for any unbalanced emperor to consider. I think a lot of the time when they are acting out, it is in trying to be too controlling. It is from a place of acutely knowing what happens if you cannot maintain that tight grip of control on society or a situation. And I feel like I've been like placing this too much in the context of like fantasy versus you know, things that would be more accurate or things that would be more relevant to a tarot reading you're doing in your daily life. So apologies if I'm not being clear about how to draw those connections. But you know, this can be in any sort of situation where someone is being controlling or something is being controlling or you feel stifled in any way. Yeah, kind of Emperor reversed and sort of the responsive energy would be this kind of vibe. So like things are way out of balance, too stagnant, power is being abused. We're going to come in and change that. So that is the inevitable response. We literally have like an Ace of Wands right here. I love this card. It's one of my favorites in this whole deck. Yeah, the revolutionary. Let's go. Yes. Okay, we have more phallic things for this Aries energy. So I think you would totally find an Aries getting very involved in some form of protest or organizing groups. Absolutely. I like that we have botanicals here. You know, that is kind of random for a pyrokinesis card. This is a fire element card, but it's just bringing me back to the different organic, you know, the refines like this on the Hamsa hand from before. It's just bringing me back to that sort of connected, collective energy. I really like that. And I don't know, security like this, it's really just bringing me back to the beginning of time, pretty much, our time as humans on this earth. I think power and its use and misuse and who controls it has been something that's been fiercely debated for all time. And so this is sort of an eternal cycle. I like this connect with fire is like a group as well. A lot of the cards in this deck are alone, but this is a group of people coming together, harnessing that fiery energy as a collective. A lot of divine feminine energy, bringing like demanding balance from masculine energy. Interesting to look at the numbers here. We have 9, 13, that would end up being 4 actually, so it's like coming back to balance because you would get 13 and then 4. So that's interesting, a rebalancing of things. This comes out to 3, I mean it is giving a lot of Empress energy. 9 would be, you know, coming to the end of a cycle and needing to close that out. And this would be the beginning. It would add up to 10, therefore 1. So really just that eternal cycle of grappling with these powers, these energies, these themes. And on that note, where things finish off, kind of another smoldering ruins thing, but if we clear these away, what we end up with is, maybe this first. Castle, it's time for healing, not war, and liminal space. I'll show these. I like the moon on the coffin. So this is just bringing us to the in-between, the liminal space, the wreckage when things get burned down. You know, we can't be full force, burning wildly, Aries energy, all impulsive and stuff at all times. That would not be sustainable. And so if that does get very intense, there is going to be a period of recovery. And so this kind of just gives me that in-between time, that winter before the spring comes and before the seeds start popping up again. Everything, you know, the cycle doesn't just reset immediately, right? It needs some time to sort of settle things out and get ready to begin again. So I just thought I would bring it full circle by doing that. It really is interesting how many things are a cycle. You think it would just be a standalone thing, but it absolutely is not. Yeah, and so I feel like I almost just want to reread this card again, or at least part of it. The last line is really powerful. If we hold that which we are not meant to, we can be drained. And if we deny that which we are meant to hold, we can become powerless. So this is why it's so important to know what is ours to claim and what isn't, how we can contribute positively to things, and how we cannot. So yes, this was a deep dive into the Emperor energy. I have no idea how long this is going to add up to. I hope it wasn't too long, but I feel like I always have more sections than I expect to be dealing with. But if you're still here, thank you so much. I hope this was enjoyable, educational. If anything, just an opportunity to look at some cards. I don't know. But again, thank you for being here and going through this study session with me. Spoiler alert, you can stay tuned for a Taurus version of this video with the Empress. So if you want to make sure that you catch that video, I would totally encourage you to subscribe to my channel, like this video if you'd enjoyed it. It really means a lot to me. Thanks again for your time and your energy. Take care, and I hope to see you in another video soon. Bye!